Welcome to Two Hypnotherapists Talking with me, Denise Mejia, in Delaware, USA.
And me, Martin Ferber, in Preston, UK.
This weekly podcast is for anyone and everyone who'd like to know more about the fascinating subject of hypnosis and the benefits it offers.
I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist.
I'm a retired medical doctor turned consulting hypnotist.
We are Two Hypnotherapists Talking.
So let's get on with the episode.
We're on the series finale, Denise, and we're doing it differently this time.
We are. We're both on camera saying hello and goodbye. But we'll be back in a month or so.
I just thought, first of all, it'd be nice to thank all our viewers and listeners.
Of course.
Joined us over the last series and supported us. Because we're not just on YouTube, are we? We're on every major podcast platform.
Yeah, and the viewings are going up. It does take a while for people to realize. Please tell your friends and relations. And what was I going to say? Yes, we should thank our guests because it was lovely.
I was just, you know what? It seems ages ago, but it's not that long ago. It's only 3 months ago, isn't it? When we first welcomed Andy Workman. He was our first guest of the series on episode 2, and he was a former policeman who became a hypnotherapist. And
our last guest, who was only last week, was a doctor who has been using hypnosis her whole life, but has not formally learned how to hypnotize, which I find intriguing.
It was interesting how she was talking about how she first discovered it when she was 8 years old, going somewhere with her mum. That was really good. Who else did we have on? Episode 4, Bev Densham, the mindfulness Pilates instructor.
Right.
Yeah.
And Karen, of course, very recently.
Karen, my former tutor. Yeah, of course.
And now collaborator with the course.
Yeah, and now collaborator, And then we had Myra on from New York. Well, from, what was it, Staten Island?
Yeah, that's New York. Don't you offend
I know
New
it's New York. I know it's New York.
It's New York City. Staten Island's part is one of the boroughs.
Yeah, that's right. One of the boroughs of New York City. But of course, as English people, we always think, when we think New York, we think Manhattan Island.
Yeah, of course.
You think Empire State Building and things like that. Trump Tower.
People do remember the Staten Island ferry. If you want to get a good view of Manhattan, you take the ferry to Staten Island and then stay on and go back again.
There's two areas that you hear of, and I always thought they were separate islands, but they're on one island. You got Staten Island,
Brooklyn and Queens.
Brooklyn and Queens, they're the same island, aren't they?
Yeah, and they run into they're Long Island. Long Island is outside the city, but it's further down the road.
Right. Yeah, I always thought Brooklyn and Queens were two different islands. Who else do we have on there? Oh, Hypno Heather, of course, from Canada.
Yes.
It was cold up there when she was recording with us.
It's cold here now.
And it's cold here today. -5. -5, yeah. And who else? Oh, yeah, and Karen, and that brought us right back to Ann again. So we've had a packed out series, really, haven't we?
We have. Do you know who we're inviting next time?
No.
Have you had any thought about? Oh, mysteries.
We haven't got them lined up yet, but I think it might be about time to invite some people back from series 1.
Okay, we can think about that. You're free to write your comments because you've got about a 3-week window there before we start recording.
If anybody watching or listening has had a particularly favourite guest of ours on in the past that they'd like to hear again, drop us a line.
Yeah, or a topic that they particularly want discussed.
Absolutely.
That'd be good.
Absolutely. So that brings us to the end of series 4, Denise, and they said it wouldn't last. So as it's this festive time of the year, we can wish people all the festivities, whatever this time of the year means for them.
Exactly.
Whether it means Happy Hanukkah, whether it means Merry Christmas, whether it means
Happy Christmas.
or just having a few days off work and enjoying the shortest days, whatever it means to you. Have a good one.
Right. Because Andy was first a police officer in the RAF, is that correct? Military police?
Yeah. I left school and joined the military,
How long did you serve?
I only did 3 years. I signed on for 9, And that part of is the reason I left. I thoroughly enjoyed my service. It was a fantastic place to be, particularly as a young man. I wasn't single. I met my good lady wife, who I'm still with now, when we were 16. So we were already together when I went into the Royal Air Force, with full intentions of getting married whilst I was there and seeing my career through. But having joined the Air Force in Cold War times, and don't get me wrong, I didn't want to go into battle. It wasn't the job I thought it was going to be. I was recruited to be a police officer. That's what I'd wanted to do. And I got trained as a police officer. I did all my law studies. And the second I went to my base camp, they gave me a camouflage suit. They gave me 3 live weapons. And I sat in a field and I guarded nuclear warheads for 3 years. And to keep myself sane, I was counting the holes in a chain link fence some evenings. So,
did you find that hypnotic?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. How ironic I end up in the same occupation some years later. So, my good lady came down to visit me, obviously as my fiance at the time. She saw the conditions under which many of the married quarters were, the people that were living in the married quarters, and said, there is no way I'm going to bring a family up in those conditions. And so 3 years into it, I decided to follow my original career path, which was to become a civilian police officer. So
was that in this country, in the US, that's actually very much appreciated. They give preference. They can pull their rank over even into civil police. So did you manage to do that, or did you have to start at the floor again?
No, I started at the floor again. I think, if I'm honest, back in the 1980s, I joined the civil police in 86. And there's no doubt at all that being a military personnel back then definitely did open some doors for me. I don't think it made it any easier, as in I still had to do all my tests and my exams and my fitness and everything else. But you were definitely looked on favourably because of the discipline side of things.
Right.
But the service has changed so much now that I retired having done 32 years back about 9 years ago now. And by the time I left, the service has changed dramatically. It was no longer, when I joined, it was referred to as the police force. And over the time I was a member, it suddenly became the police service.
I was introduced to Pilates. I'd never heard of it, a form of exercise, and I realized it helped very much. And after quite a severe road traffic accident, I was like, what on earth am I going to do for a living? And I'd done this sports science degree. I was fascinated by psychology and mindset and how the mind can help the body, but also and how exercise can help the body and the mind. So I ended up having in-person studios in Hertfordshire for 16 years. Then I set a goal to move to Dorset by the Sea, which is my happy place. And I now have a Zoom studio teaching mindfulness Pilates with either one-to-one, or I teach small beginner groups of up to 5 people at a time, or maximum 10 in my classes.
Has that replaced your teaching in the physical world? Have you just morphed into just doing Zoom?
99%. Today I have been 90% on Zoom, and I have been sort of a little bit at the studio down the road in person, but 99% of my work now, because I discovered it's because of the pandemic, but then because it works and because clients are benefiting just as much, and I can see what they're doing as long as their camera is set up properly on their laptop and the screen is set at the right
exactly
angle.
Like hypnosis, but now people are so much more comfortable in the online world.
Yeah, and I think as long as that you know you're teaching it properly, you can see what they're doing, you can correct their alignment, make sure in the correct position. Yes, demonstrate each exercise, then sit up, talk the client or clients through. And it's great because you can see them side on if they're lying on their back. You can see a little bit of the floor. You can see their mat. You can see their position. And then I think half of them feel like they're having a one-to-one because I'm still talking to everybody, still looking after everybody, making sure it's done properly. I realized in my early days, I put my hands on my clients so much, moving their feet but actually you have to obviously verbally cue the the corrections to make sure it's done properly. But they've got, but in a way it's better, because it means you're empowering them how to practice on their own better. And I am encouraging them, to incorporate it into their lifestyle. Practice a little 6 minutes of, Pilates exercise in the morning before breakfast or first thing. And of course, they're going to then do it better on their own, because they're moving themselves into the position. Or the video on Zoom is like a mirror, and then they can if they're like this, one shoulder up, one down, and they're supposed to be lifting evenly, they can actually also look with their eyes, like having a big mirror there. So it's actually quite useful. So if it didn't work, I wouldn't do it, but because they are getting the same benefit, and they can be anywhere in the world now, all over the UK.
That's the other lovely part.
And it means my mum can come as well, and my sister Julie, who's been a guest on your podcast. And how lovely is that? And they live over 100 miles away.
Yeah.
I have a friend I'm going to be sending this episode to, who moved to Costa Rica about 1.5 years ago and has recently qualified as a Pilates instructor. She's opening her own studio. So I will be pointing this out to her too.
There you go.
I would say, Denise, as well, this is where I first came across Bev on LinkedIn with her online Pilates. And of course, we're all used to seeing a Zoom room like this where we're talking face to face. But you can see Bev's clients in rows there on their Pilates mats on the floor, all doing the online Pilates. It's fantastic. Really inspirational stuff.
And here in the Western society, we don't think about balance that way. We don't think about ourselves in that holistic, cooperative understanding. We tend to just think about the mind, or just think about the body, or just think about the spirit. And then whichever one we like the best, we tend to develop the most.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, don't you think?
I do. And because I learned the same way, that's what made me so passionate about this, because I was able to break through that fragmentation, that compartmentalization in my life, where I thought of my work as separate from my personal life, and I thought about my family as different from my own self. It's like all together, and learning to be able to establish a better balance with all of it together is possible, using that type of mindset, that Eastern model rather than the Western model.
Right. But integrating them if needed. If your pain in your right lower quadrant is because you have appendicitis, Qigong is probably not going to fix the problem. We need to be able to work together with all of these things. It will probably do a lot to help you recover as you recuperate after surgery.
Agreed. And, it's really fascinating. And I'll share a personal example from myself, right? Based on Chinese medicine, this time of year is the time of the lung, and it's the time of letting go. That's what we're practicing, is letting go. As we look around in nature is, all the trees are letting go of their leaves, and they do it so gracefully and so elegantly. And it's a beautiful opportunity for us to mimic that same idea, but how hard it is to let go. I was raised by a control freak, and I learned very well how to control, how to control. And it creates this stranglehold kind of situation. So letting go, it doesn't come naturally to me. And my father passed on October 1st. And that was a very difficult.
Not this year.
No, in 2019, sorry.
Okay, that's right.
He passed in 2019 on October 1st. But October 1st stays in my cellular memory as this time when I just start to notice my energy go down, right? And this past week, I started experiencing some vague pains in my shoulder, and some tension in my thumbs, and some waking up at night, which these are not normal behaviors. And it took me a minute to establish the understanding, this could be related to this event, that my body is still holding the trauma, the grief, the awareness of this event. I miss my dad terribly. It's been 4 years, but it was like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And so it really gave me an opportunity to allow myself to go deeper into that grief rather than ignore it, and allow myself to reconcile, right? To get better at letting go of that control, and white knuckling it through life, and allow myself to compassionately love myself through this stage.
White knuckling it through life. I like that expression.
That's what control freaks do. They just white knuckle it.
No, it's interesting talking about that thing with October the 1st. And obviously, I'm sorry for your loss, and that date means such a lot to you. But that date, I think for so many people, especially over here, as you say, the trees let go of the leaves, the days suddenly get a lot shorter. And it is quite a symbolic date, isn't it? There seems to be this seismic shift in attitude as soon as we go past the 1st of October. And I always think, well, 30,000 years ago, and perhaps we were all living in caves and what have you, what did we do then at this time of the year? Because we didn't even sort of plant our own fields or anything, did we? We just went out and hunted. What would we do at this time of year? We would more or less hibernate, I would imagine. It wouldn't be safe to go outside. There were no lights outside. And I think some of this is, a throwback to that in our sort of biological programming as well, and our mindset. What do you think, Denise?
Yeah, I think for people in business of any kind also are thinking, oh my goodness, it's the last quarter of the year.
That's really the key component that I agree with, because our modern lifestyle has so many conveniences. It makes it so much easier to work ourselves to death. And not allow ourselves to give a pause that's appropriate, so that we can manage the reactions, the traumas, that we can deal with those things, because life is demanding and awful things happen. We talked about my father's passing. Grief is an extra special kind of difficult task for me, because in this time of year, October through December, I've had several losses of very close relatives of mine. On the 29th of October, Sandy in 2012 hit my house and destroyed the first level of my house, leaving my family, my pets, and myself homeless for 6 months. So I have a lot of practice at learning how to redistribute my energy, time, and money so that I could recover from these crisis moments.
Oh, I mean, I have a couple of stories about how I found hypnosis, but the main one was really after over a decade of doing my own self-healing and trying different modalities and really delving into the world of, heal thyself and trying everything. I had a moment where I was like, oh, right, hypnotherapy. And it was at a time in my life when I was feeling like I'm fully aware of why I'm doing the things are, maybe how I got here, what the programming is, what the childhood stuff was like. But I really was just having to succumb to the involuntary triggers and responses. And I knew that it was part of my conditions, like I had some skin and lung conditions. And so I looked it up online. I found a training close to me. It started right away. I took my baby and my family, to another city and started the training. And it really was, as soon as I was in the training, starting to become a hypnotherapist, I had a huge release and moment that I just knew everybody needs to know about this.
Very similar to mine. I was a physician. I had to retire because of health. And I thought I was going to be a health coach. I trained as that because it's something with my brain while it wasn't working. And I just happened across an introduction to hypnosis. And I took a week of it. I thought I was just going to have some idea. And I went, whoop, this is what I should have been doing for years. And I was so furious when I found out that our respective medical associations agreed back in the 50s when Ellman and Boyne and all those people were training. And still we're fighting that. No, it's not woo-woo. It really is a real thing.
This is really strange hearing this from you, Karen, because I can remember back in the day when you were teaching me, the first couple of modules, I couldn't get my head around not allowing people to offload. Because similarly to when you had your cafes, when I was a jeweler, part of people's journey, jewelry is usually an emotive purchase, christenings, birthdays, engagements, weddings, that kind of thing, or even memorial jewelry. Quite often people want to offload as part of the journey of you making something for them. And, I regarded it as part of my job to listen to them. So I couldn't get my head around that at first when I was training to be a therapist. It's not necessarily a good thing listening to people offload, as in, get them concentrating on something else instead. Because I used to think at first, how rude, not listening to people.
Right. But obviously they come in and they tell you their story, but then they don't have to relive the pain each time they come in.
We still
it then. Yeah.
We do still listen, because it would be rude not to listen at all, wouldn't it? But the idea is to guide them towards how they want the future to be, rather than dwelling in the past. Really, that's how I would phrase it. But I remember you being very skeptical about the solution focused at the beginning of the course, and I also remember the day you walked in and you said, "I've got it. It's fantastic."
I got it. Yeah, I had a light bulb moment, because I remembered an incident after the jewelry shop had been robbed, and what my GP said to me, and it just suddenly fell into place. It was like, yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it now. And from that point on, I've absolute faith in the process, and I understand why the process works. It was really, really strange that.
Yeah, in fact, I have to say, I've often wondered why you chose a solution-focused hypnotherapy course, Martin, with that in mind.
Because after studying everything, and I shopped around a lot, believe me, it was the only one that appeared to be evidence-based, science-backed, and not full of BS.
Fair enough.
But putting it bluntly.
Yeah, that's a good reason. Good reason.
Do you practice self-hypnosis?
I do visualizations, which I consider sort of self-hypnosis. When I was a kid, I discovered if I did the sort of trance training, hypnosis training, right before I went to sleep at night, and visualize what I wanted to have happen, that things would go in that direction. And I used that all through medical school when I was studying, and I've used it when I've been dealing with other problems and things. It's been very helpful.
Yeah. Have you ever used it with patients?
Not specifically saying that I'm doing hypnosis, but I have worked with patients that are open to the idea of mindset and have walked them through various things that they could do. One example was someone who was dealing with someone who was really obnoxious at their workplace, was causing them a lot of trouble. And one of the techniques I had learned was to imagine a bubble around yourself protecting you so nothing harmful could get through. And so I was telling them how to do that. And they came back to me and they said, as soon as I started picturing the bubble, the person just, and they hadn't said anything. The person that was bothering them just said, well, if you're going to be that way, there's nothing I can do to deal with you, and left. And so they came back and said, well, that was amazing. Now I just do that. And they always leave me alone. I thought that was pretty cool.
Right. All right. Well, it's been lovely. We, of course, will be speaking in the 4 to 5 weeks before you will see us again, but because we had to line up these people. So put in any recommendations you have, and we'll see if we can have them on the show.
Brilliant. Okay, and I will.
Okay, dear.
I will see you before, but I'll still wish you a happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed listening. Please remember, this podcast is designed to give you an insight into therapeutic hypnosis and is for educational purposes only. So remember, consult with your own healthcare professional if you think something you've heard may apply to you or a loved one.
If you found this episode useful, you can apply for free continuing professional development or CME credits using the link provided in the show notes. Feel free to contact either of us through the links in the show notes. Join us again next week.